Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1231B, and today's date is March 17th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, The World is One Poke Away from a Major Disaster. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, out in New York, there is a bill that is aimed at securing a right to be forgotten, introduced by Assemblyman David Weprin, and a Senate Bill 4561 by State Senator Tony Avella. And these New York politicians will require people to remove inaccurate, irrelevant, inadequate, or excessive statements about others. So within 30 days, this bill says, of a request from an individual, all search engines, online speakers shall remove content about such individual, links, or indexes to any of the same that is inaccurate, irrelevant, inadequate, or excessive, and without replacing such removed content with any disclaimer or takedown notice. Now, basically what they're doing here is they're controlling speech. And they also want to do the following. Now, if material is not current to public debate or discourse, and it's not relevant anymore, they want that information taken down. Now, failure to comply with this would make the search engines or speakers liable for at least statutory damages of $250 per day plus attorney fees. Now, under this bill, newspapers, scholarly works, copies of books on Google Books and Amazon, encyclopedias, online encyclopedias. Now, if a judge and a jury found that the speech was no longer material to current public debate or discourse, well, it would all have to be removed. And the bill contains no exceptions, even for material of genuine historical interest. But the deeper problem with the bill is simply that it aims to censor what people say under a broad, vague test based on what the government thinks the public should or shouldn't be discussing. And again, this is trying to control speech. Once again, if you notice, with all these bills and everything that they're trying to do with political correctness, all they want to do, and they continually try, they want to control what we're saying, what we're thinking, what we're doing. And that's not their job, because nothing overrides the First Amendment. That is the law of the land. And if we don't support it, and we believe that these laws, if they should ever pass, hopefully not, if we believe that these are the laws, then guess what? You've just given up that right. They're going to tell you you've given it up, even though you can't give up a right. So we all have to say there, nope, we still have the First Amendment. That law does not pertain. It's in violation of the First Amendment. Now, a couple days ago, Andrew Napolitano, he was out there talking about how GCHQ, well, they were the ones who got the information for Obama. Then Sean Spicer was fielding questions from reporters. He also mentioned it with other individuals. Now, the UK spy agency, GCHQ, they came out and said, no, this is ridiculous. This never happened. Now, this whole thing came about because there's no evidence as of yet. Trump has not produced anything. So many of these individuals were getting their information from different sources who said, yes, we know exactly what happened, and they put it out there. Again, not backing it up with any type of proof at all. So, once again, we have an intelligence source, unnamed, nobody knows who it is. This person said that Spicer and General McMaster, they apologized to Britain. General McMaster contacted Sir Mark Lyle Grant, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, to apologize for the comments. Mr. Spicer conveyed his apology through Sir Kim Durock, Britain's U.S. ambassador. But again, we don't have any proof that they actually did this. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It's really not important. Because what is important is that this one statement that they said, the spokesman added that it would be impossible for GCHQ to spy on Mr. Trump as both countries are members of the Five Eyes Alliance. Now the question is, what is Five Eyes? Well, the Five Eyes Alliance, it's a secretive global surveillance arrangement of states comprised of the United States, National Security Agency, the United Kingdom's Government Communication Headquarters, GCHQ, Canada's Communication Security Establishment Canada, the CSEC, the Australian Signals Directorate, ASD, and New Zealand's Government Communication Security Bureau, GCSB. And here's what we know about the Five Eyes. Under the agreement, interception, collection, acquisition, analysis, and decryption is conducted by each of the state parties in their respective parts of the globe. And all intelligence, all the information, is then shared by default. The agreement is wide in scope and establishes jointly run operation centers where operatives from multiple intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes states work alongside each other. Together, the Five Eyes collaborated, developed specific technical programs of collection and analysis. One senior member of Britain's intelligence community said, "When you get a GCHQ pass, it gives you access to the NSA too. You can walk into the NSA and find GCHQ staff holding senior management positions and vice versa. When the NSA has a piece of intelligence, it will very often ask GCHQ for a second opinion. There have been up and downs over the years, of course, but in general, the NSA and GCHQ are extremely close in their relationship. They rely on each other. So despite rumors of a no-spy pact, there is no prohibition on intelligence gathering by Five Eyes states on the citizens or residents of other Five Eyes states." Very interesting. So they're saying, because they're a Five Eye state, that it would be impossible to get the information. Well, not from what we know about them. They share everything. So really, most likely, they probably passed along the information, because we know that spies lie. Do you really think they're going to come out and say, yes, we gave this to the United States? No, they're going to lie on top of their lie. Look what happened with Clapper here in the United States when he went in front of Congress and they asked him point blank, "Are you spying on the American people?" He looked them straight in the face and said, "Absolutely not." And then we come to find out that he lied, because there was other information, and they did a little investigation, and it showed that, yes, they were spying on the American people, and he had to change his story. They lie. They're not going to tell you the truth unless you have facts. And there's a former CIA officer out there, and he's saying that CIA agents, they are taught to lie. And if you get caught up in a lie, lie on top of that. The primary mission is to protect the agency, not the Constitution, not the people, but the spy agency. Most likely, all the other spy agencies around the world have the same type of agreement, where they protect themselves, where they're taught to lie. This is what spies do. They're working for themselves. They're not working in the best interest of the people. They tell you they are, but it's a lie. So when you hear GCHQ come out and say, "This is ridiculous, there's no way because we're Five Eyes community," well, they share everything. They have access to the NSA database. Now, what's even more interesting about all of this, when we're talking about these FISA warrants, if we go back to October of 2016, this is coming from Heat Street. There are two separate sources with links to the counterintelligence community, and they have confirmed to Heat Street that the FBI sought and was granted a FISA court warrant in October, giving counterintelligence permission to examine the activities of U.S. persons in Donald Trump's campaign with ties to Russia. Now, contrary to early reporting in the New York Times, which cited FBI sources as saying that the agency did not believe that the private server in Donald Trump's tower, which was connected to Russia Bank, had any nefarious purpose, the FBI's counterintelligence arm, sources say, well, they got a FISA court request around possible financial and banking offenses related to the server. His name was not specifically on it, but this is how they got the FISA warrant. The first request, which sources say named Trump, was denied. We talked about this before. This was back in June. But the second was drawn more narrowly and was granted in October after evidence was presented of a server possibly related to the Trump campaign and its alleged links to two banks, the SVB Bank and Russia's Alpha Bank. So this is very interesting because they probably took this and then used it to spy on Trump, but it doesn't have his Trump name on there, and it shows that they were looking into the connection of the two servers. So what we're seeing here is that there is a paper trail of some sorts. Now, I'm sure the Trump administration, they need to put all this together to show the links between Obama, the FBI, GCHQ, and most likely this is what they're working on. If they can't come up with any type of evidence, well, there's going to be a problem. The corporate media is going to be all over him. He's going to be considered a liar. No one's going to believe him ever again. So we see at this point that they do have some type of paper trail. It might not have Trump's name on it, but it looks like they're getting closer. Now, today there was a laptop that was stolen from a Secret Service agent. Now, the laptop contained information about Hillary Clinton and the email investigation, as well as floor plans for the Trump Tower and other national security information. And it was stolen from a Secret Service agent's vehicle in Brooklyn. Now, the Secret Service reported the laptop containing the floor plans for Trump Tower, evacuation protocols, and information regarding the investigation of Hillary Clinton's private email server. The agent also told investigators that while nothing about the White House or foreign leaders is stored on a laptop, well, the information on there could compromise national security. Now, it's very interesting that this was stolen because there are two things on there, Clinton email probe and the layout of Trump Tower, which leads us to believe is something being planned because they knew exactly where to get this laptop. They knew exactly that these two things were on there, and they stole it from a Secret Service agent. This was an inside job, and we'll have to see where this goes from here because this is very odd. Now, what's even stranger is, remember we talked about the Alpha Bank and how they made a really big deal that Trump is communicating with Russia and he has connections, and it turned out that this was completely fake, phony, and false. It was a server that was compromised. Spam was going all out all over the places. Well, very interestingly, the Russian bank Alpha Bank just reported to U.S. authorities that the mysterious communications has recently resumed between the two computers. One that Trump has in his business, not personally, but it's in one of his businesses, and their computer, their server in Russia. And they're saying that activity has begun again, and there's information going back and forth. And they looked closely at it, and they're saying that the activity may be work of a hacker trying to create a political hoax, or they're trying to make it look like Trump is again communicating with Russia. Because how interestingly, as the Russian propaganda of Trump being connected to Russia, well, that's completely falling apart. There is no evidence whatsoever. I wouldn't be surprised at this point where they're trying to create something. So Russia right away went to the Department of Justice and said, this is happening. Just to let you know, you need to start an investigation and find out where exactly it's coming from. Now, the communication attempted to trigger verification signals between Alpha Bank and a server associated with Trump's organization. The source said the spoofing attempt is equivalent to someone in the U.S. sending an empty envelope to the Trump Tower but putting on the envelope a return address in Russia, causing the Trump server to falsely return the communication back to Moscow. So someone definitely knows what they're doing, and they're trying to make it look like that these two servers are communicating and messages are going back and forth. So we'll have to watch that very carefully and see what comes out of this. Now, we know that the Department of Justice, they indicted 2 spies in Russia. These spies do not live in the United States. They live in Russia. There's no extradition treaty between Russia and the United States, so nothing's going to happen. Russia has just come out and said they have received absolutely nothing from the United States in respect to this whole hacking of Yahoo. So far, nothing has happened. They haven't received any type of message whatsoever. Now, we know the Dutch vote, that has ended, and we know that Geert Wilder, he didn't win, but something very interesting did happen. We know that Mark Rutte, he is a globalist. He's not going to split apart from the EU. But right before the elections, 2 publicly funded websites used by Dutch voters to help them decide which party to vote for in the national election were inaccessible days before the election. Now, most voters use them in weeks ahead of voting, not on election day, but they use it because they try to figure out who is the best candidate to vote for. There's like 30 questions on there, and if they answer the questions, it gives them some idea of who they should vote for. And during this period right before the election, the servers came under a DDoS attack, and they were inaccessible by everyone, which I find very interesting, because they knew that there might be cyber attacks, so the Dutch government decided that all votes in the election would be hand counted after their intelligence agency warned of foreign governments that could attempt to influence the elections by hacking the computer system. So, just very interesting how the people didn't have access to these computers. They were going to do hand counts, which they did, but people wanted questions answered to see who was the best candidate. And it's just very interesting that it happened at the exact same time the election was going on. Now, out in North Korea, we see things are really building up, and we are one poke away from a complete disaster, World War III. Right now, the SWIFT messaging system, well, they've cut off all remaining banks in North Korea. And this is where money is transferred around the world. And right now, North Korea has been cut off. We see Tillerson is out there warning that the United States' patience with North Korea, well, it has ended. And like we said yesterday in the report, the foreign policy, it looks like the deep state has control over it. And they knew that they couldn't start anything with Russia with Trump. It just wasn't a possibility. So they looked for other hot buttons, and they saw like, oh, he gets really angry and upset with North Korea and Iran. And ever since that point in time, and we've been tracking this, they've been pushing North Korea to get them all heated up. And we can see they're definitely doing it. And we see a Russian senator is out there saying the U.S., their withdrawal from the talks with North Korea, it's going to be disastrous. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley said that the U.S. does not want to get back into the six-party talks involving South Korea, North Korea, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia. We're not willing to do that. Been there, done that. Well, if it means a nuclear war or peace, I don't think we're done with that. Because if North Korea and the United States and South Korea gets into war, they're going to drag in Russia, China, Iran, Syria, and the rest of the world. This has been their plan. They're still pushing this. Now, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chief of Staff, General Joseph Dunford, and his South Korean counterpart, General Soon-Ji Lee, discussed on Thursday the likelihood of North Korea engaging in vexing actions that coincide with the U.S. and South Korean drills, their training exercises. They're saying that North Korea might start something in April. Okay, the United States, South Korea have about 100,000 so soldiers, all this equipment there. They're going to be flying it around all over the place. North Korea is on alert, and they're saying North Korea is going to do something? This makes no sense whatsoever. It's almost like saying that Russia is going to invade Ukraine. Russia is going to invade the Baltic states. How possibly can this be true? Does everyone realize that Putin has cut his military spending? When you look at the figures from the Russian Federal Treasury, they've confirmed that Russia's defense budget has been cut by 25.5% for 2017. Does this sound like a country that is ramping up for war? No. Actually, who's trying to increase the military budget? Oh, the United States. So we can see at this point, a lot of this stuff is propaganda. The United States, Trump, they need to sit down with North Korea before we move this to the next level. And the next level will be war. Because we know we have certain forces training to take out Kim Jong-un. And we are like just one poke. And I use that analogy of that bully walking down the hall poking that kid. I've said it many, many times. And this could happen in any different ways. We know that the United States cyber attacks the missile launches in North Korea. And we know they fly off course. Now think about this. Have they been testing this to see if they can gain control of their missiles? Because all they have to do is redirect the missile to maybe a U.S. base in Japan or maybe in South Korea. and say that North Korea actually fired the missile at one of these countries, even though they didn't. So you can see they can set up a false flag very easily because they need to make it look like North Korea initiated it. It can't look like the United States is. The United States is not going to invade North Korea. The rest of the world will look at this and say, okay, the United States just invaded a country that didn't do anything. But they can make it look like North Korea attacked. And that's what they normally do. It's called a false flag. We see 4 NATO warships. They have arrived in the Black Sea of Odessa. And according to the statement from the Ukrainian Navy, the ships will stay in Odessa until April 20th. During the visit, the crew and commanders will meet with command of the Ukrainian Navy, the heads of the Odessa Regional State Administration, and the Odessa City Council. And we know that Ukraine wants to be part of NATO. They aren't at this point, but they would like to be part of it. And we know that NATO, the United States, they're pushing a war with the southeastern section, trying to bring Russia into the fold. We see Turkey right now, well, they are threatening Europe with 15,000 refugees per month. They're saying they're just going to let them loose out to Europe if they don't do what they want, because they said they broke the deal of allowing them into the EU, and now it's time to pay the price. And they've done this before. And we can see this is going to create anarchy among all the EU nations. It's going to be a complete disaster. Now, out in Syria, we see that 4 Israeli planes flew into Syria and started to bomb areas near Palmyra to support the Islamic State. Now, Syria is saying that they shot down 1 Israeli jet. Israel is saying that all 4 left, none of them were hit. Now, they weren't using the S-300, the S-400. These were Syrian missile systems. And once again, we don't know exactly what happened, but the Syrian government is saying, yes, one of the planes has been taken down. Now, what we see from all of this is that it shows that Israel just invaded a country and admitted to it. They flew 4 jets into Syria. Why are they flying into Syria? Syria didn't attack them. What are they doing there? What is the United States doing there? What is the UK doing there? What is Turkey doing there? They're all in this country together illegally. Now, Syria is out there and they are saying there is a disaster that is just waiting to happen. The U.S.-led airstrikes, they've been bombing infrastructure inside Syria. And they've been bombing this dam by the Euphrates, the Tishrin Dam. And they're saying that after all this bombing, the dam is very weak now. And if they continually bomb in this area, it's going to burst. And the total destruction of these dams that are being targeted by airstrikes will wash away and flood cities, towns, villages, and thousands of lives will be lost. So they're making a plea to the U.S.-led coalition to stop the bombing in this area. Now, was this part of the mission? Well, we've seen it before. The U.S.-led coalition, they bombed grain silos, the electrical plants. They do this to give them an edge, to make the people pay. We see it in many other countries, Libya, Yemen, other countries, they do the same exact thing. This is about the central bankers. And when I say the United States, I'm not talking about the people of the United States. I'm talking about the deep state, the central bankers, those individuals that are calling the shot. So we're heading down this path right now where we're getting very close to entering a stage where we might be moving into war. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.